Welcome to another episode with Coffee with April. This time we're going to discuss competitions, and more specifically we're going to talk about, maybe even give some tips and tricks about how it is and what you should think about regarding competing for your first time. And Joe here is competing for his first time in the Danish National Brewers Championship later in May. Should we start with just in general? What's your thoughts on competing for the first time?
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited. Firstly, so that's good. More so now than I was when we kind of first discussed it. So I've gradually become more and more excited.
Why are you more excited now than before?
Because I'm finding more valuable things from it. So I guess when I first kind of accepted the idea of competing, I was still kind of in a previous heads or mind space where I thought I'm not really sure what I can take from this. There are things I'd rather learn first, and other things I want to prioritize in terms of coffee education. But now I realize after just starting and preparing that that's completely wrong.
Okay. Could you give some concrete examples? What are the most important kind of giveaways for you up until now? What is the most important things that you have learned or realized?
So I think, for me, there's something which is different from the guys that are just doing day-to-day barista work, which is they're still serving coffees. I'm no longer serving coffees. So for me, one of the major things was that I was given the opportunity to be working with coffee every day again, making sure that my competencies are still there, and improving as well, focusing on the things that you haven't done before. And that's something that you wouldn't necessarily get a chance to do on the bar, because you may be kind of tied into the way that your cafe serves or the roast profile that you're working with. And this is just an opportunity to learn to work with lots of different coffees. You've obviously got the compulsory to prepare for. So that's for those of you that haven't looked at competition as a format or a structure before. This would be a coffee that you're given in the competition, and some of the variables would be fixed, so you would not be able to choose a grinder. You'd be given a grinder, and the same for water composition, but you can choose how you brew that coffee. So imagine being in a multi-roaster cafe and receiving a new roaster for the new time.
Yep.
The only problem is you're going to take that coffee and serve it to the judges, and you're not going to know those scores. So that's an incentive for us to be working with different coffees very regularly in different brew methods, and generally just expanding all of the competencies, so that when we get there, we can taste the coffee and go, it fits this profile that we've already worked with before. That's really exciting.
What is the kind of game plan, or what have you been up to the last kind of months and weeks? We're a big believer in structuring some kind of practice or approach for competing in general. Just share kind of what have you been doing?
Yeah, sure. So we started with presentations as early as January. And this is despite the fact that right now we still don't know which coffee I would compete with.
Exactly, yeah.
So when I'm working with presentations, I'm working through presentations which are based on coffees that we already use, or other coffees that we have at the time. Usually coffees that we'd be working with for a reasonable amount of time, and we'd be selling to wholesale and to retail clients as well. And the reasoning with that is essentially that I should be able to compete with that coffee just as well as a competition coffee, in the sense that I know it very well. We work with it weekly. I'm close to the roast process. We cup this coffee every week, so the subtleties and the true character of that coffee I actually understand. And as a roaster, I need to understand the variables behind it as well. So it's another opportunity to explore each of those coffees, look at how and where they're grown and the varietal and each of the things that make that coffee special, irrespective of if that's the coffee I'm actually going to stand up with and make.
Exactly. I think that's a very important point, because that's something that I continuously have discussions about when coaching others as well, is that people don't feel they can get started because they don't have the coffee. They feel a bit lost, and then usually what you're ending up doing then is losing valuable time in terms of practicing. So don't like there's different parts of the presentation to practice on.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just kind of technical things, how to actually brew and what do I actually say and how do I serve the coffee.
Yeah.
So there's plenty to do before you even have the coffee as well.
And that would be something I've learned along the way as well, which is to begin with, I was also apprehensive for the same reasons, which was surely, learning, formulating some kind of presentation is going to be counterproductive if I then change my coffee 2 weeks before the competition. But actually, no, because even now I'm still trying to structure the presentation in a way that works best for these 10 minutes and for serving the coffee in the way that I want. And that can work with any coffee. It's the way I want to serve it.
Exactly.
So it's running through those and thinking, oh, actually, I should have put that at the beginning, right? We should. I think it's going to flow a lot better. And you set up and you start it again, and then the next week you try it again, but you do it with a different coffee. So you are still locking in things about your presentation that you're going to carry right up until the competition.
Yeah.
Even if the coffee's going to change, and that's important.
Yeah, for sure. And in the end of the day, when you're up competing, the most important thing is that you have the tastiest coffee, right? So one can even argue that up until very, very close to the actual competition, one should work with multiple coffees to determine exactly which coffee is the best at that given time. Because in the end of the day, even if you have a really good presentation, if you don't have the coffee to back it up, you're not going to win, right?
True.
On the subject of coffee, what are you thinking? How are you thinking on competition coffees? And what are the kind of what are the important things behind a good competition coffee for you?
Yeah. So the competition that I'll be competing in is in May, which is pretty great because it means that our fresh crop Kenyans should have arrived, which is always exciting for, the coffee community in general, I think, but especially us. We will always take a good few Kenyans. We'll also take quite very high quality Kenyans and Kenyans we worked with before as well. So I'm definitely excited about that. At the same time, I'm aware that I may then be coming up against other people that thought the exact same. So we this is why we still have this fluidity, and that we tasted some really great Costa Rican samples, for example. Really interesting coffees, great story, really interesting varietal. Interesting flavors as well, very different from your Kenyans. But that could potentially be a more valuable presentation that I don't necessarily know until those Kenyans arrive as well. And we can really get to grips with them and go, no, this is shining really right now, or the Costa Rican should go before. But you can use this as an excuse just to taste as many coffees as you want as well.
Exactly. No,
you shouldn't think of it as you're out there searching for the one. You want to taste samples from whoever you can take the samples from, go through and really think, maybe you find something that you don't want to compete with, but at least then you have a reason. You've locked in something that you want to avoid, that you don't feel comfortable with working with, or that you don't like as a character in a cup, and you don't feel like you would present as well with them. So there's a lot behind it.
Definitely, and there's two very important things when it comes to competition coffee. Like, first of all, it needs to be a coffee that you have some kind of relationship with, right? Or at least that you like enough to kind of be able to pitch yourself to the judges. Secondly, there's attributes in competition coffees that are not good versus very good, right? So for example, if you look at the score sheet, certain parts of that score sheet is double the points, right? So for example, acidity and balance and a few other attributes. So that's for example why it's very interesting to work with Kenyan coffees, because they have an amazing acidity structure, right? So when picking a coffee, it's also important to look at the just attributes of the score sheets in general to make sure that you kind of understand that properly. So the competition coffee is a very big part of what we're doing, but also very importantly is just to kind of details of brewing coffee. You're brewing 3 different coffees at the same time. You're getting scored on how well you do it, which is perhaps more complicated than what you actually think. They score you down to you need to pour the exact right amount on the exact time for each pour, right? So it's a relatively tricky thing to do. How have you been practicing on that aspect of it? For example, we know you were up doing judging calibration as well in Sweden, which was an interesting step on this process as well.
So that would be it would be a major part of this kind of journey, and that Patrick has already competed a month ago. I was part of the preparation for that, which was great for me. It gave me an example and someone to kind of watch the way that they compiled all their information, the way that they put their presentation together, and the way they changed their presentation as well. But the most important thing then was actually going to competition. That was the real change for me, and that also that was where I became a lot more excited as well. Because again, I had a sort of preconception that this would be very, very competitive. It's a competition, it's in the name. Whereas actually the prep room was a lot of fun. There were a lot of different characters in there. A lot of people competing for different businesses or independents, and a really wide spectrum of the coffee industry in there. But just a lot of fun. And, it was also in there that I would be brewing with you as well, working through compulsory brews, working through open service brews as well, and dialing in different recipes. You're going to get there and realize the water chemistry is different if you didn't bring your own water. There's so many variables that you want to get your head around. That's part of the fun, and you're with other people that are also as excited about it as you are.
Exactly.
And I think that's part of it, which is that you may think all these people are coming after you, but they're actually there to support you as well. And it's kind of cyclical.
For sure, like competing is a network thing, right? Almost the biggest part of the pleasure is actually meeting all these people, right? Because in the end of the day, only one person wins. There's a bunch of other people in the competition as well, but there's so much more to take with you from competitions than just winning. That being said, if you're competing to win, which you should, because you're competing, so why not try to win? You need to have someone with you that understands the competition. You need to have someone with you that have brewed with you for a long time, that understands you as well. You need someone to set up all of these tiny little details. You don't want to lose because you forgot your paper filters backstage and you don't have them and you start to brew without filters, right? There's so many tiny details, and regardless of how much you're practicing, in your roastery or back home or wherever you are, unless you nail it on competition day, that practice doesn't matter. So most of us are really good when we're in our comfort zone, at home or in the roastery or in the coffee shop. We nail our presentations, the coffee tastes amazing. Then you come up on competition day and everything just kind of falls apart, right? So it's very, very important to have someone with you, right? Competing alone is never a good thing. Could you tell us a bit more? We mentioned the calibration, right? Joe was kind enough to help the judges in Sweden to calibrate for the Brewers competition. How was that? That was technically your first time, up in front of judges,
presenting in that sense.
What was your biggest? Because we decided this about an hour before the calibration actually was, and then Joe did not know about this beforehand, so it was kind of
I mean, thankfully, again, I'd done a presentation before. That was helpful. I knew I wasn't going up there without any foundation. I'd run through a presentation, so I knew I could do it. We had a coffee with us that was a really interesting coffee, actually. It was a coffee we were thinking about competing with as well. And I knew that coffee pretty well, so it was great to go, okay, now I can pick that up and I can talk about this for 10 minutes. Obviously, it wouldn't be as smooth and around the edges as you would have liked, but just the idea that small things that you may think about yourself in terms of the way that you're structuring your presentation, the judges will see completely different. And without the opportunity to do that, I wouldn't have seen those things. So I'd still be preparing for the competition saying, oh yeah, but I'm perceived like this, and when I say this, I'm always perceived like this. And actually the judges were saying, oh no, this was actually really good like this, and we really liked this. So they're actually looking at you very differently from the way that you're looking at yourself. You're going to see that in the feedback you get from the competition, but this calibration just helped kind of underline that in the preparation stage as well. It's possible some of these guys would actually be judging for Denmark, so that would be interesting as well. See if they notice some improvement, I hope, actually, between sessions. But yeah, I mean, invaluable to do it. I would also say just being around the competition though, as I already mentioned, being in the prep room, that doesn't necessarily need to be assisting someone else. That can also be as a volunteer. There are a lot of different things going on at the competition, again, which I wouldn't have necessarily thought of prior to being involved.
Yeah.
But now I realise actually how much work it is for the chapters of each of the SEA groups and things. And again, as a coffee professional, you learn something. Because you often ask the question, why am I setting it up like this? Because actually we expect this standard, and you go, oh yeah, great, okay. So I think just the culture in general is worth being a part of.
Yeah, for sure. And just to rewind a tiny bit here, because we talked about, I think, for me, for competitions in general, a very relevant thing, whereas the judges will perceive you differently from how you perceive yourself. I think that's a very important thing. These are judges from different countries, different ages, different genders, different everything. They all will look at you completely, in a new way in that sense, right? So when you're practicing, it's very, very important that you expose yourself to people that do not know you. People that can look at your presentation without having all the kind of background story about you or about the coffee or whatever that is, that can objectively just look at what you're doing and say whether that is good or not and how that actually is perceived, because all of us, again, have an idea about how people perceive us, and most of the time it's incorrect.
And it's actually forcing you to move in a direction that you shouldn't necessarily be going in. It's a comfort thing, or I should say as well, I'm a very nervous person, and something like this isn't the most comfortable thing for me, but it is gratifying. I do enjoy it, and what I've also come to accept is that you're going to be nervous, and that there's at no point where you go, oh, I'm past that point now. I think that kind of nervousness will always remain. That doesn't make you a worse brewer or a worse contender or a worse competitor. The judges are almost kind of expecting it to a certain degree. How you manage that is up to you, but I don't think you should let that dissuade you from competing either.
I feel like nervous is, I've been competing for a fair amount of years now in different coffee stuff, and you're always nervous, right? You're always going to be nervous. I think the best way to kind of get around that, because you will get there on competition day and you will be nervous, but if you can stand there and you can look back at the few months and you can see, okay, well, I actually practiced. I actually nailed it several times. I did this in front of all of these different people, and they all liked it. There's something really good here. Then at least you can kind of feel a bit of security within that.
Exactly.
Which I think is an interesting part of it as well. I think what we're gonna do, we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna come back with much more about this. Both following kind of Joe's competition in the nationals in Denmark, and also my competition in the worlds. Hopefully his competition in the worlds later on as well. Let's see where we end up. As usual, comment down here if you have any kind of questions, or maybe you want to compete yourself, and I don't know, whatever you may be. Just write us. We're always happy to have a discussion. Please share if you like this as well. Thank you guys for watching.